Hello. Welcome back to the Michael Sisco Show. Trying to get the entropy set up early, as I always awkwardly do, because I am my own producer. But welcome to the show, Nathan Duffy. You are the first guest after I have made national news all across the country.
That's good for me. Good for me.
I don't know how it's actually going to equate to anything, honestly, because I don't know. I haven't seen a skyrocketing and increase in Twitter followers or anything. So
yeah, you normally even bad press is good press, right? But you haven't seen the results of it yet.
No, not really. Well, because I think I'm just a sideshow to I can't say her name because I'm on the FEC report, but
sure, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, they just use this guy's bad, and that's why she's bad, and yeah, fun stuff. Hang tight. I'm trying to get this entropy working so people can leave super chats.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it always takes a second. But how have you been?
Not too bad. I mean, stuff in the world's pretty crazy, but when you log off and are not plugged in online, it's not like something that's looking you in the face every day. But I mean, obviously it's still out there, and it's pretty wild, everything that's going on. But I've been fine in the midst of it. So.
Yeah, that wasn't you setting fires, was it?
No, negative. That was not me. That was the gender reveal party, and then also just random strikes of lightning, and then some arsonists between all that stuff. Yeah.
So was it really all three, or was?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's definitely been a decent number of the fires were started by a bunch of lightning strikes that were are very rare, basically, and in dry storms and stuff. A decent number were. The gender reveal party one is obvious and is kind of well known. And then I'm sure there's been others, or we know that some arsonists were setting fires as well. So which is normal. Yeah.
Interesting. The entropy's almost done. My goodness, this takes forever. We are gonna hear the echo for 2 seconds because I'll have my boomer tech moment when I try and mute it before it makes noise. So
it's all good.
It's a staple for the show. I think if we didn't have my boomer tech moments, it just wouldn't.
Yeah.
It would not be the same.
Yeah, you got to have that. Yeah.
Gotta have. Now it's muted.
You're a young boomer, so.
I kind of am. I mean, Nick Fuentes called me a boomer when he met me, but
it's hilarious.
I don't even have the proper green screen because I'm in this compound hiding out in the Appalachian Mountains. Got my, we're ready to go out. We're ready to go out here.
Locked and loaded. Let's go.
Yeah, there's people want me dead. People want me dead. I've influenced much with little. I'm a poor white guy with a laptop, and then suddenly George Soros is terrified of me. It's fantastic.
You gotta love it.
It's pretty awesome, dude.
But, I like that the hate watch people are listening to all of your entire archive to see if they can find anything juicy. That's really good to know.
It's funny. One of the 50 listeners.
Hi, Jared. How are you doing?
Hello, Jared Holt. Maybe he'll write. Michael Sisco brandishes a weapon on YouTube stream. But so we're here to talk about why libertarianism is pretty gay. Astrology for men. Don't tread on me. Don't tread on me. But what is? Let's just hop right. I guess we have to. If we're gonna critique something, we should probably explain what our understanding of it is. So, what is your understanding of what libertarianism even is? And the reason I want to talk about it is because early on when I first switched to live streams, I think Mr. Witkoff and I were actually critiquing our system of government, and somebody was like, well, after all this, how can you not be a libertarian? And so I was like, well, there's a topic. So,
right.
Yeah, so what is libertarianism?
Yeah, I guess I could look up the actual definition, but it seems like to me the kind of like key tenets of it are like, well, part of it's in the name itself, liberty, right? Like that's kind of like liberty is the highest sort of political orienting goal, essentially, political and personal goal, really. The more liberty, the better. And then that kind of like expresses itself in respect for natural rights, essentially, which is the role that the government can play. Basically, libertarianism is also associated with desiring a very small, limited government, or in like extreme cases of like anarcho-libertarians, no government. But what the government is supposed to do is at least like secure your rights to own property, your rights to say what you want and do what you want unmolested by anyone else, also part of it revolves around contract theory, the right to make contracts with one another as a kind of like foundational societal principle. So that's kind of like, I mean, that's a little overly simplistic, and there's also specific like economic theory related to it, I guess, that's a little more technical and complex, but the kind of fundamental thing is maximizing personal liberty and liberty in general for all individuals, sort of. I mean, that's like, again, very basic way to understand it, I think, but fair enough, I think.
Yeah, it seems like there's quite a range in kind of the extremes too. Like you have the Tea Party Republican people, and then you have the ANCAP people, which are like the non-aggression principle. Right. Pretty insane, if you ask me. Yeah, and I don't really know, but it seems to be such a great variance that there doesn't really seem to be any kind of uniformity that I can really tell that is significant.
There's like you're saying, there's very many streams of libertarianism, and basically how far do you go with the various principles, like I said, like anarcho-libertarians or ANCAPs, like you said, who you want to go like the extreme the whole way that direction, and then more kind of like lesser libertarians who just want more personal rights, right to like do whatever you want to, like smoke weed, have abortions, like and not have that, not have the government do anything about it or whatever. But as there's people like that who are sort of like libertarian on the personal level, but not as much on economics and free markets and stuff like that. But the kind of like total package kind of pushes in on both of those two main directions, personal liberty and economic liberty or whatever. But yeah, so I mean, like that's and like you're saying, there's a very wide variance in the types of libertarians that there are. I really like, I know most people kind of like on the right politically had at least a libertarian like moment in their like intellectual development or whatever, or even could have been libertarians for a long time, 10 years or something like that. But I never really had that, so I never got into like the weeds really on the whole like libertarian question or whatever. But but I have a general idea of it enough to, I think, talk about it, and I definitely know like my critiques of it. On the general level. Again, I'm not really getting into the weeds on economic technical issues, but yeah. Yeah,
well, we have George Giordano. I can't say your name, dude.
Giordano. George.
I'm like 3 Yinglings in, so that's how much I think of you as a guest, Nathan.
I'm sipping on water. It's all good.
Former libertarian here, came to my senses when I realized that complete freedom isn't everything, and that usually when people are given freedom, they'll choose wrongly.
Yeah, and actually that's a very good point, and also more to the point, I think than the fact that people often like misuse their freedom. if you go by the older classical definition of freedom by like the Greeks and also by like the church fathers, what they intend, and also in scripture, what was intended by even the word or the concept of freedom and liberty was that was encoded into what liberty was. So if you say like used your your ability to say kill someone, obviously you're free to do that. Obviously in libertarianism you're not, because you're violating that person's right to exist or right to life or whatever. But okay, so like let's not do murder. Let's say if you used your liberty to blaspheme, let's say, according to the church fathers, that would not be a free act, because you're using your freedom in the sense that we understand it, your ability to do whatever you want, but you're doing it against virtue, and then therefore that is degrading yourself and actually enslaving yourself to your passions, and so therefore that's not an actual free act, and it's not an expression of freedom. So in the older like classical understanding of freedom, even do it's not just the negative definition of freedom where you just remove constraints and restraints on what you're able to do. It's that you actually choose the right things as well. And the modern, of course, and since the Enlightenment, conception of freedom is very different, and it's just more this negative conception. Well, it developed in stages, but this negative conception of freedom as just like, okay, no constraints on me, from government or from a church or whatever, you know what I mean? It's just like whatever people want to do, they should be able to do, as long as they don't hurt someone else directly or something.
Yeah. Well, Allison Tejada, actually a Facebook friend of mine. I'm a conservative libertarian, but I'm atheist. Well, we should change that, Allison. It's those 5G towers that you have near your house. That's why you're that's why you're atheist, and your hair color changes all the time. Well, I mean, that's not really. I mean, fundamentally, the two concepts are not of libertarian, at least, and atheist are not that far removed from each other in lots of ways. Because the idea that you're trying to maximize personal liberty for everyone, that's not a Christian or traditional idea, really. So I mean, it's not too surprising that, to me at least, that those often go hand in hand. And if you look at people who are the main editors for like Reason magazine or like all the like most like well-known libertarians, very often they are atheists, or they identify as atheists. So that's not too surprising. Well, she's a nice atheist. She's always nice to me.
I know. I'm just saying, and I'm not even. Obviously, I think atheism is not good, but I'm not, in this instance, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that those two concepts are not really that divorced from each other.
Yeah. Somebody just asked me a question. That has nothing to do with the show, but Michael Witkoff doesn't realize I'm streaming, and he's like, I'm having a trad forum on June 12th it's going to be in Indiana. You should make it out. It's on. It's going to be worth it. He's like, would you like Roosh to come and speak? Yes. That's
another bearded fellow there. Yeah.
Yeah, we that would be a nice addition to the lineup. So, yeah. But yes, Dr. E. Michael Jones should be the keynote. I just got to confirm the date with him. So the key here is that freedom traditionally included the notion of freedom from passions. That's correct, actually. Yes.
Yeah, that's a kind of like short way to put it, but yeah, I think that is if you read a lot of the ancient like Stoics or the Socratics or whoever like the Greek philosophers, that is very common, like a widespread understanding. Obviously, there's diversity in the different schools at that time, and they'll have like different variations, but there's a very widespread understanding between lots of them, and then also that extends into the early periods of church history up into the medieval period as well, in East and West, I think, and it's only in the modern period where really this notion where freedom is just negative, and it's just a removal of constraints on your will or whatever.
Well, hey, it looks like we're gonna do. Well, we do have a priest in the chat. Oh, hello, Father Chris. Good based Rocore priest.
Father bless.
Father bless. But it looks like we might end up doing Orthodoxy 101 today, because Allison Tejada, what exactly does freedom from passions mean? I think I'll let you hit that, Nathan.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just from the Christian perspective, the passions are not what. There's also another word that's kind of different in Christian theology than what it commonly means today, which, passions are sort of, I mean, it's related to what we think of as passions today. Passions are just sort of your inclinations, your natural, not actually natural, but like your inclinations to different things in the world that you desire or want to do. And obviously some of those, if they're ordered and tempered by reason correctly, essentially, they're not bad in themselves. So an example is food, right? Like we have a sort of natural inclination to feed ourselves to live, and as long as we don't eat gluttonously, then that's fine. We can do it, and we submit our passion for food to reason, and by doing that, we're not doing anything wrong. But the passions, if they're not submitted to if they're not made to submit to the higher principles in man of spirit and reason and such, then they can become disordered. And so then the desire for food can become gluttonous. The desire for sex, which has a illicit outlet in marriage, can become lust and fornication outside of marriage, etc. So the more you become free from passions, the more that all of those passions are, and it's not. There's also a sense we use the word passions that they're always negative, essentially, and so that's why when we say freedom from passions, it's passions that are all like passions in the sense of desires that are always illicit, like a desire for gluttony or a desire for sex outside of marriage or whatever it is, So.
Yeah, I think libertarianism is kind of the inversion of Christianity in a sense, because we're seeking freedom from basically being able to resist those. We're seeking to be able to resist those things and not be controlled by what we are calling the passions. Whereas libertarianism is seeking to be allowed to do those things without infringement.
Right. And yeah, not only that, but like what libertarians are actually seeking freedom from a lot of times are seen as, like, if not okay, often very good, right? So like kind of like along with classical liberalism, part of what was happening there was they wanted to be delivered from the rule of kings, popes, bishops, and then ultimately later down the line, as liberalism developed farther, now they want to be delivered from the authority of fathers and gods. And so and for us, like all of that stuff except for popes as Orthodox, but submission to bishops, submission to the church, submission to a rightful civil authority, submission to fathers, and ultimately submission to God is all something that you actually undertake as a context within which you are given and exercise your freedom, and it's not any impediment to exercising your freedom. So basically so you're right that what we're actually seeking freedom from is something different. It's our passions, the devil, like the world, worldly things, and also the things that libertarians really, not just libertarians, but like most modern political people in general are seeking freedom from, are a lot of times things that we are legitimate and licit authorities, basically. So
yeah. So what would you say? Because I know libertarianism, it is a pretty attractive ideology. It has pretty much it has a level of popularity that has a mass appeal, which means that it is hitting on something. So what problems is it identifying accurately?
So modern libertarianism, I think, is correctly saying that the state, and I'm using the state in a general sense, but we can focus on America or whatever, but that the state is like corrupt in these various ways, and also that it does infringe on liberties, like legitimate liberties that we should have in various ways, and is and that also that the size of government and the control of especially the federal government over the people is too much, and all these things. So I mean, like that impetus and also generally libertarianism mostly, I think, tends to harken back to the era of like the founding fathers, essentially, as like an era where there was, you know, much more personal liberty and like economic liberty and basically something that we should be striving to sort of return to, right? So that's kind of like their lodestar a lot of the time is like, okay, let's get back to the Constitution. Let's do it how the original like founding fathers did, and in that line of thinking, like, yeah. That probably is better than what we currently have, because what we have is so bad in so many ways. But that's one thing I think that they basically get right, is that trajectory towards like, okay, this has been corrupted. It used to be even better. So it's, in that sense, it's sort of a conservative impulse, even though, you know, their liberalism in general is not, because that's already something that's corrupted something, you know, from before. But that kind of like orientation towards the past is I think good in general. So that's something where I'm like, okay, yeah, you have a lot of points in their criticisms of what exists. My problem is more with their prescription on how to like address that, or like what direction we should move because of that, you know.
My Second Amendment.
Second Amendment is great, but there was a time before there was no Second Amendment, and you just had, you know, a basically unwritten right to defend yourself, right? Like that is in the unwritten constitution of, you know, whatever country you were in, or in, you know, like in the common law, just like a commonly understood and stuff like that. And that's fine too. That's another problem, is that, you know, like we have this political system where there's a written constitution, but we find ways to like not actually, well, we found ways to construct a government that really has little to do with it and just respects like it in a very like thin sense. And so and libertarians see this and they think that's a problem, of course. And so that's another, and obviously this is not all libertarians, but like I'm just saying in general, most of them are, I think, have that inclination. And that's another thing I can agree with them with on to a point, at least, you know, that direction is better than where we are now. But again, like that I would want to go beyond that though.
Yeah, this one might get me in trouble because I'm probably going to agree with you. Any thoughts on divine right, libertarianism, and the Constitution? Most libertarians believe that the Constitution is from God and divine in some way.
I mean, I really like that. Sounds like almost absurd. Like who would believe that? But like, no, but I think you're right that there definitely are. You don't want to what's it called? Straw man them, because a lot of libertarians don't think that, of course. But like, if you listen to the way that Ben Shapiro, I mean, he's not like a pure libertarian, but he has like lots of libertarian tendencies, and the way that he like talks about the founding is in very like quasi-religious terms, like the Constitution is, you know, the best document after the Torah or something like that, and that he literally does see it as like you know, basically divinely inspired. And no, obviously I think that's crazy, because like, I mean, it's like like I'm not anti-founding fathers or anything, and I do think their political like imaginations and what they actually did was actually kind of amazing in a way. But you know, like their fundamental orienting principles were not, you know, like what I would consider all that great, because a lot of it is corrupted by like Enlightenment thought and liberal thought and this you know, and the orientation of revolution against you know, like you mentioned, divine right and stuff like that. So I think that doesn't really make sense. But again, like some libertarians think like that, and it is very strange to me. But you know, some don't. So
this one. I probably didn't warn you about my new format. I do generally throw up the questions from the chats.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I like it. Just always giving us something to, you know, respond to, which is better than like just coming up with stuff on our own, I think.
That's true. God being personal implies his transcendence. Father Dimitri Stanilo mentions this a lot in Orthodox dogmatic theology. God is beyond all bounds, including passions, and thus he is totally free.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think there's some people who and these are more like modernist theologians who like are kind of like off their rocker, but like there's some people who point to God in the Old Testament, and obviously like lots of times where he actually does things that looks like they could be passionate, like, you know, exercises his wrath, or like, or, you know, something where it looks like, okay, he's having a feeling and reacting to something. But this is just, you know, descriptions of, you know, God who is eternal and unchanging, interacting with beings who are finite and changing. And so therefore, as an internal being who has no passions, but, you know, interacting with people who do, it comes off as, you know, like it's described as a passion, right? As something wrathful. So if the humans, like, you know, when if the humans are apostatizing some real bad way, or like blaspheming or whatever, then, you know, he sends a flood or something to destroy them all. And it's like, okay, that was passionate. Well, no, it wasn't. It was actually the change in the humans that precipitated the event that happened to them. And he himself was unchanging. He was the same the whole time. But he just determined that was what was best for humans at that point, essentially, in his, like, you know, omnipotence or whatever. So.
Yeah. Orthodox Reactionary actually has a wonderful YouTube channel, so if anybody wants to check that out, subscribe to his channel. But he says libertarianism doesn't have any justification to ban child pornography and pedophilia. We saw this break out with the advent of the movie Cuties and all the chaos it caused in their camp. We also see this with the corporate censorship and such. Even though we're basically being ruled by corporations, the libertarians are like, well, because they're private companies, it's their right. Yeah, well, they're governing us by proxy, basically. But any comment on that?
Yeah, well, like, no, the power of them is, you know, grown beyond, you know, like merit for sure, like which is a problem in and of itself. But even the idea that, like, you know, a company should be allowed to broadcast, you know, whatever it wants, as long as it's not, well, now in this case, even, you know, like what Cuties was, which is like softcore child porn, essentially, without having to, you know, submit to like for a long time we had obscenity laws in this country that were applied all the time and said, no, this constitutes obscenity and can't be on the air. This does. A lot of it's fallen away because, you know, our culture has become so degraded, and basically people don't think that you can really apply it. Most of those, obviously, like, you can't have like hardcore porn on daytime TV or something. There's still like limits on it, but more and more it's gone away. And in lots of realms, especially online, because it's kind of like a free for all online, right? And like anything goes. But yeah, I don't think that's good or how it should be. And you don't even have to harken back that far to you know, have an idea of wanting to ban obscenity. We had that in the United States, you know, not that long ago, and we could just restore that like pretty simply. So it's not like you have to go back to like ancient times to want to ban porn. So. Or especially child porn, but I'm getting beyond myself. I think it's obvious that I would ban both, but child porn especially.
Yeah, Father Chris has been, you know, he's been counter signaling in the chats. He says, "Forgive me, but don't forget, I am armed, Father Chris. I am armed."
I don't know what he's asking for forgiveness for, because I didn't see what else he was saying.
Oh, it's this. We're critiquing the founding fathers, and he's like. They have more in common with the Danelaw than the Enlightenment. So
that's true. I believe so. Yeah.
But it still doesn't mean that it's perfect. But
yeah, of course not. Yeah.
We just think we just have ideas that are better than yours, Father Chris. It's just you're a great priest, but statecraft not so much. Statecraft not so much. The pissed Fetchmeister. The Enlightenment and its consequences have been a disaster for humanity. Agree.
He was going for the Ted Kaczynski statement, changed a little bit, but yeah. But yeah. It was close.
Yeah. Allison, Cuties was a product of more royal family BS, in my opinion. Well, let's just say that the royal family in England is not an example of anything that we really would point to for our ideas. It's basically,
sure, of course not. Yeah, I mean it's a you know, like a monarchy in name only, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know how, like, what cuties has to do with the royal family, though. That I didn't understand that. But
I think she's probably alluding to like Prince Charles and the whole Epstein Island thing, or whoever that was. Whichever
I
one.
see. Yeah. I see. So kind of just like elite pedophile rings, that kind of thing.
I like this comment. Allison, please become Orthodox Christian. Okay, have a good day. That would be beautiful.
Amen.
That would be amen. Amen. So what so we've identified kind of the issues that libertarianism does accurately address to an extent. But why does it not work?
Yeah, it's a good question, because like in a certain realm, like libertarians will point to the basically success of free market capitalism, which is what which is the economic system that they support and think, but that they think it should be more laissez-faire all the time generally. So they'll point to the fact that basically capitalism through 18th, 19th, 20th century did work, right, in creating so much wealth and bringing so many people out of poverty or whatever, and that's true so far as it goes. But it's also there's a problem with even that, because you're setting a goal that is not necessarily one that we should be striving for as a society. So for example, when people just lived in sustenance conditions and they had smaller communities that didn't like produce and wealth, but were able to sustain themselves, there's nothing inherently worse about that than one that's continuously expanding and creating more wealth, right? So you're already so when you point to that as okay, libertarianism or free market capitalism basically does work, you're already sort of assuming something that you don't get to assume. You have to make an argument for, which is that a sustenance level society that doesn't increase in wealth is somehow subpar or bad or something, and I don't really see like why we should assume that. So my point is like when and so that's one way in which the question of working is already fraught with implications that are difficult to define, and we're going to have differences with libertarians when they say okay, working, because they're saying yeah, it does work at this, and I'm like okay, but I don't really want that, and I don't really think that's that important. So that's one thing. And then another thing is just we see the kind of like failure of libertarianism as a political movement. You could say okay, that's because just like we could be right about everything, but people are too stupid to adopt our ideas or whatever. But I think it goes beyond that, and that even when you've seen them basically make changes and do things, the state of the economy and the world as it is, like I said, sometimes I think a libertarian direction will be good, but the fundamental orienting principle is not correct, and so whatever it works at doing, I'm not that interested in, basically.
Yeah, I noticed that those sort of arguments economically quite a bit, like measuring the health of a society by GDP, so to speak.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's never. It doesn't usually equate to the economic health or well-being of the citizenry. That's just
right,
gross domestic product.
Sure, especially in like the conditions that we have currently economically, which are so stratified, right? Like a society can be growing in wealth overall, but all of it going to the top 0.01% or whatever, and then middle class people have been losing the relative value and power of their own dollar that entire time that your GDP was going up, and so that's kind of like a false basically measurement by which to measure the health of a society in the first place. So yeah, so that's my main problem with like trying to determine what counts as working, pragmatically speaking.
Well, here's where we get to the real fun. Here's the real fun. So what system would be best for us to experience all of the ideals that libertarians want and seek to achieve, but how can we give them that in a system that actually works?
Well, there's some dissident libertarians who sort of like kind of figured this out a little bit, like I guess like which I've never read him in depth, but just like knowing about him from what other people have said about him, like Hans Hermann Hoppe or whatever, who basically says that you need monarchy basically to get the goals that you really want, that libertarians like value and everything, that you're much more likely to get that from a monarchy. He says even an absolute monarchy, which I think is kind of like a modern deviation from like traditional monarchy, but at any rate, some form of monarchy. And I think he's right. I think if you look at like most medieval monarchies and empires, there was obviously all kinds of like problems socially and economically and everything, but at the same time, in terms of like personal freedoms or whatever, like if you lived under the aegis of the Byzantine Empire or whatever, like it's not like the emperor's like coming all up in your stuff all the time and like like surveilling you and like trying to like make sure you don't do this or do that. Like, so it's like in terms of like so-called civil liberties, I mean, you had plenty of them. You could do basically whatever you want because the empire just and I don't want to make it sound like they're unfeeling, but the point is like they just don't care what like every single, like the empire's gigantic. They don't really care what this citizen is doing over here, or like as long as they're not like fomenting rebellions and stuff, then there's no problem. You like they're not trying to mess with you or make you do this or make you do that, which is very different from the government we live in now, right? There's very, very strong basically surveillance state into your life, like very in England it's obviously out of control in terms of like what you're allowed and able to say. America, obviously we have the First Amendment, so it's in theory different, and on the government level it is different, but because of the problems with the big tech companies becoming the new modern the new public square, where speech is actually enacted or whatever, and then them having control over it. Now we do have a problem, even though it's not from the government, of infringing on liberties that we should have, to express ourselves in the public square and say what we want to do. Which again, like even in very lots of medieval and ancient societies, like the king didn't care what the heck you were saying as long as you weren't like taking up arms to try to dethrone him. Like you say, he's like, okay, you say what, even if you're saying stuff against them, as long as it's not an organized political rebellion, most of the time he just like did not care. So I mean, like basically I think and there's lots of reasons for this, like Moldbug writes about this in his writings about like how this actually functions and like why monarchy is better for keeping the government out of people's lives and stuff like that. But yeah, that goes a little. I mean, you could read that, of course. It's beyond just talking about right now. But
yeah, this is going to be great fodder for the media. It's going to be great. Allison, I don't think libertarian has failed. I just think we are new. Give us some time and a popular candidate. I know they say they won't run, but I don't think, Allison, we're not saying that. We're not really talking electorally. What we're saying is that it just won't work. It just cannot work effectively as a theory because it is a flawed theory. And the biggest indicator of this is if you go to a libertarian rally, they're all a bunch of kooks and wackos.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think that it's not electorally popular either, though. If you look at that, there's a very famous chart that some political scientists, like who did a study on political views or whatever, posted. You've probably seen it around. Lots of people have, but it's basically a 4-quadrant like political viewpoint chart. And although the quadrants are not the normal ones that you see with like left and right economically, and then authoritarian, libertarian, on the other axis. Like I forget exactly what they are, but basically there's a huge like red cluster, like in this region, there's a huge like blue cluster down in the lower left corner, and the cluster of dots like represents people's actual views, and then the lower right corner would be the actual like libertarian corner where right economically and libertarian in terms of like personal liberty or whatever, and like that quadrant is basically empty, like literally no one's there. So it's not only the fact that I think it's a flawed theory, which I do think it is, but I also just think it doesn't like most people are not oriented that way, no matter like who they are. Like the political spectrum is just not interested in it either. I think both of those things are true at the same time. Yeah, and also like the changes in the Republican Party that we've seen, under Trump the last 4 years has been away from that, and like it's been, incredibly within the Republican Party at least been incredibly popular in a much more populist and less like basically free market fundamentalist direction. And so I don't see going and you don't see that either at all in the like the right wing parties in Europe, like that the Anglo like free market fundamentalism is a very particular thing, and it was never really right wing in the first place, but like even in America where it was considered that for whatever 30 years, that's sort of an aberration in the history of what should be considered of actual conservative thought. So libertarianism is not really even a species of that fundamentally, I don't think. And that people and I'm not even saying that therefore it's wrong. I'm just saying, okay, if that's the way you're oriented, then why would you be into it? It could be right. In theory, it could be a good theory and just not be a right wing theory or whatever. But I don't think that that's really possible. But
yeah, I think I know a lot of people back to monarchy. Like if you bring up any form of authoritarianism or monarchy system, they immediately think that that's going to be like super intrusive and dystopian, right? Right. Whereas historically, that's just not accurate. And one good book that kind of demonstrates that is On Power by Bertrand de Juvenal. And he basically breaks down the growth of the state. And the mega state is the system we have now. That's the most intrusive government that we've ever had on Earth is either a democracy or a republic. And the more democratic it is, the more intrusive it is into your life, and the more dystopian.
Yeah, so, I think that's largely true, but I mean, obviously, there like Soviet communism was at least as intrusive, of course. But and that's technically socialist or whatever. But I would say that the both of those systems. Basically, people way underrate the extent to which that's true about liberal democracies, at least, and also, socialism. I would see as a sort of like a reaction to the rise of capitalism, right? So, and it's not really fundamentally a different thing in its essence, and like there's actually a lot of similarities between America in the like say 20s and 30s or whatever, and Russia at the same time. It's Soviet Russia at the time. But your point is well taken though, and I think that you can see the growth of the state rise alongside with the wider free markets and more capitalism and all of that stuff. So if what you're really concerned about is political and personal liberties, well, this system the economic system that's produced this like great amount of wealth happened at the same time as you were losing a lot of those. So why does that happen, right? Yeah.
Father Chris says, I know the point he's trying to make here. He says totally ignores the influence of technology. Well, I don't completely agree, because when the sovereign's power isn't dependent on the opinions of the people, he has no need to manipulate the opinions of the people, and doesn't really need to suppress opinions in the same manner that we are kind of suppressed now, really, by our soft totalitarian system with the corporations. So that It's incentive that drives the dystopian effect, really.
Yeah, although I do think, and I'm not like, his point was short, so I'm not sure exactly what the point is, but I think he is right though that technology is a very fundamental driver of change as well, and you can't really divorce it completely from the changing political structures that arise as technology changes. So and a lot of times technology is what's driving the political change rather than the other way around. So yeah, no, I think you can't discount technology though when you're analyzing it historically alongside political systems or economic systems. So yeah, no, that's very true. Technology is crucial if that's what he's saying.
Ricky Misters, Michael, you should grow your beard like Duffy's. Well,
I mean, everyone should. Why not?
That's true. I mean, if you don't have at least a beard, you're probably homosexual.
It looks like that guy had a beard, so you're okay with that. So.
Allison, I believe that they are now kooks and wackos because people are stupid. They don't understand what libertarian is. LOL. They just want to be associated with the Republicans or Democrats, and they think the Libertarian Party are neutral. Oh, well. Well, whatever. Ask Richard II about what? I don't know what you're talking about, Father Chris.
He might be talking about, ask Richard II about technology still? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Boy, pissed Fetchmeister. Boy, did I nail it or what? George Orwell. Hey, and then
yeah, that's true.
And then Orwell ignored America as much as Juvenile does, or Sisco. Okay, all right. We're gonna have to kick you out the chat, Father Chris. We're gonna get the shotgun back. We're gonna. But about whether or not. Oh, okay. He's talking about whether or not popular opinion matters to a monarch.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. Well, no, that's. There's a limit on the point I was making about that. That of course, if and I said, as long as the people aren't like organizing against the government and everything, then yeah, it's not a big deal. But yeah, once that threshold starts to be hit, of course it becomes a big deal. So yeah, that's not completely true that they didn't care about personal opinions, but for the most part only in very touchy political matters when they were indicated a threat against power and stuff like that. Yeah, sure, there is that, but I think the modern state is concerned with not just personal opinion, but even like getting into the area of being concerned about thoughts, in to a degree that most monarchs never would have cared if it wasn't infringing on their rules. So
I mean, they're obviously going to care about the same thing that every government cares about, which is sedition, right?
Sure, yeah, of course, yeah.
So I mean, what do you think about the use of technology to kind of monitor that?
Yeah, well, I mean, like to a certain extent, like it's we're saying it's natural. Like it's hard to say in the system and the moment that we're in now, because most of what we have is like this like internal fighting between parts of the state, and not here's the state and then here's this like other group that wants to conquer it and take power or whatever. It's basically factions within the state that are vying for power in the already existing state, right? So just in the example that we have currently in the US, there's like Trump and the actual elected government of Republicans, and then like the bureaucratic like deep state that like hates him or whatever, and these people are vying, and also the media, of course, which is not an official arm of government, but is sort of an unofficial one in the way that it controls popular opinion. And so you have like these various institutions vying for power within the state. And so it's so opinion, even in that, is important. Like you want popular opinion on your side if you're either if you're on either side of that divide within those factions, of course. And that determines a lot, sort of, when it is a democracy, and you are holding elections and everything. So all of that is still relevant, and there's obviously reasons why the media is trying to propagandize people in various directions, and why the factions within government are very concerned about that. That's a hugely relevant thing today, but it would be better if it wasn't. Although you can't just make it go away either because of the environment we're in. Yeah.
Well, who holds the media accountable? Is there anybody? They seem to be a branch of the government at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, not really. I mean, especially in America, like in other like European countries, there's a little more like public oversight, I think, of media. That doesn't necessarily make it better. It becomes an even more quasi like formal wing of the government in those senses. So here at least we've got like multiple channels and of political opinion, although it's very dominated one way, of course. But it's kind of its monopolization of thought and political ideas is sort of not by design. It's like, okay, it's a result of having a free market of media or whatever, and then within that zone, certain views becoming dominant and everything. And that is a problem. But yeah, and no, there's no authority to control it, which is I think to a certain degree not great. Like, we have freedom of the press, but I think that's not always good. I think there are limits even on that could be enforced, certainly on us, like we talked about, for obscenity, but also like stoking insurrections and violent in the streets and stuff like that, to the extent that like that happens a lot now, and if you do it in a very direct and precise manner, like you say, as a media person, like group so-and-so go to this street and do violence, that can be prosecutable. But if you do it in a very general manner where, and then riots just start breaking out, you're not held accountable for that. So, and it happens all the time, especially with these. I mean, there's been tons of media support and backing of BLM riots, and using very violent language that can stoke that violence. And there is no accountability for that. And there should be. Like, that's going too far with freedom of the press.
Yeah, actually, Father Chris just made a comment. I agree with this because I am a victim of it. Because why? Like, I get the whole.
Amen. No, that's completely true.
Someone's a public figure, right? Because I made a podcast and was a campaign manager, so I can't sue somebody for lying about me across mainstream media. Yeah, that's complete BS.
Yeah. I agree completely. And also I saw instances of this, which this might actually fall under the libel laws that we already have. But like just this last week online, there was a journalist, I think his name's Wajahat Ali or something, on Twitter. And he was responding to the Breonna Taylor outcome of that, where there was no charges brought against, no murder charges at least brought against any of the cops. And he was saying, and he mentioned that in the tweet, that there was no murder charge, and he called the cops who killed her a murderer, which there were no murder charges brought against them, and they were essentially exonerated by the process. And then he said the same thing about Kyle Rittenhouse, that he was a murderer. And so in both cases, if the cops, they've already gotten off of the charge of murder, and if Rittenhouse does too, then this is a very clear instance of libel, and those people are both very much in the public eye. They actually might be able to sue him for that, and I was making a clear point about that. But I think you're right. Even stronger libel laws where you could do it even more broadly would be a great check on the press for sure.
Yeah, I know they said that my website was a white supremacist and QAnon website, and the only time I ever wrote the word QAnon was when I was addressing their claim that it's a QAnon website. But,
man, you're really into Q. You've never mentioned it until they called you that. That's crazy.
It's insane, dude. It's insane.
That is
they also called me an Orthodox Christian supremacist. Well, it is. It is the fullness of truth.
Do I believe Orthodox Christianity is the supreme religion and the truest religion and the fullness of the truth? Yes, I do. I guess that makes supremacist has weird connotations though. But I guess I might be one of those. Yeah.
But it sets a weird precedence. It's like, so if you're using my religion and sticking supremacists after, why can't I do that for your religion?
Right.
You're a Muslim. You're a Muslim supremacist.
True.
So yeah, whatever. Allison says she is Q. LOL. Uh-oh. You're gonna get arrested, Allison. You're done. Father Chris got owned in the chat. Owned. He's saying popular opinion was important in the Byzantine too. And Brian Frakes said, like what? Getting booed in the Hippodrome? You're done, Father Chris. Done.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, although Caesar was kind of pre-Byzantium, but
yeah, but it was pretty much the same structure by that point. So, in Byzantium,
it's the Roman Imperium still. Yeah.
Yeah, they kept the Senate. They still had the emperor. Yeah. It was the same thing. The only real difference I would say is you had the church there, which acted in the Symphonia as a check for the spiritual realm instead of the temporal realm. And at times you did have some overstep from both sides, but for the most part, I think it worked quite well. Right. Anyways, any final thoughts before we end this show?
Yeah, I got one more. So as I was saying, to me, libertarianism is very much a hearkening back to the time of the founding fathers, which, compared to where we are today, like I have some sympathy with, but I would want to hearken back further, right? And so, and even if you look at the time of the founding fathers, like one of the main political orientations, even among the fathers prior to 1776 was, royalism or loyalism to the British crown, and that would, to me, represent a much more traditional and conservative outlook in general, and one that I myself would agree with. But if we look at the descendants of the politics of the time, we had like that essentially. Royalism itself or loyalism, depending on what you're talking about exactly, went away pretty much entirely, and that whole political disposition disappeared. And everything that we have today is a descendant of the patriot disposition, which was the people who ended up writing the Constitution and founding the country. And that disposition. So my point is, we don't actually even have a genuine representative of what I think would be the most sort of healthy and genuine traditional political outlook in popular in popular political thought in America. Although Trump is far from that himself, obviously, he's very much within the vein of liberalism defined classically or whatever. He still represents something that opens up a new space for thinking in a more conservative direction, and against the sort of a mini libertarian, I think, perversions of it in the way of free market fundamentalism and stuff like this. So that's kind of the thing that I would end on, is that we do have something we can harken back to, and we should harken back like even farther than the founding politically. And also we have something, a space opening up where we can actually try to start exercising political will in that direction, which I think is great. So.
Awesome. So what are you up to these days? Are you still writing? I know you were back on the old Thermidor, and then you moved to the American Sun. Are you writing? Are you doing anything like that? Where can people follow you?
Okay, well, you can follow me at the illegit on Twitter. So, like, if I do write something, that's where I'll tweet about it. But no, I haven't been. And yeah, generally, if I write something, I'll put it on the American Sun. But or maybe your website. I know you've offered invitations, but I've been lazy recently. So yeah, no, I haven't written anything recently. But you never know when it strikes. But yeah,
we are paying now. We are paying our writers. Yeah.
Oh, dang. Okay, well, that changes the game. Maybe I'll get on my pen game then.
It's not gigantic, but it's something.
I mean, $1 is better than $0. So
it's a little more than $1. more than $1, but we thanks to the support of our patrons, we are able to kind of pay that forward to the writers a little bit. And
awesome.
Yeah, so if you're watching, go ahead and give us some shekels on the Patreon, and that will mean more consistent content from saintsedwardsmedia.com. But I appreciate you coming on, Nathan. It was good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
We will have you on again at some point. You're on the cycle of return guests, so.
Oh yeah, me and E. Michael Jones, right?
Of course. I think. How many have you? Is this your second time or?
At least 2, maybe 3. I think 2 though. I'm not sure. Okay. I'm not actually. This might be 3. I'm not sure.
All right.
I forget if we had 2 before.
You are tied with E. Michael Jones, I think. So.
Nice.
I think we'll end on this note. I am Jared Holt, and I approve this stream.
All right. Thanks, Jared. Welcome.
Thanks, Jared.
Are you going to become Orthodox now?
Can you imagine if he just becomes based ortho bro at some point?
God willing. God willing.
Somebody make a meme of Jared Holt with a long beard and an Orthodoxy or Death shirt, and then we'll be happy. So
that's funny.
On that note, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you around, Nathan.
See ya.